I'm Layla, 34, and for 4 straight years I poured every overtime shift and freelance bonus into turning my detached garage in Maple Grove Estates, Michigan, into a bulletproof product photography studio. Seamless white cyclorama walls that cost me weekends to install, $5,000 strobes shipped from Germany, a color-calibrated editing station that made clients say my shots looked like they came straight off a catalog page. That side hustle now covered 45% of my bills, with contracts stacked through next quarter and brands begging for my seamless setups. Life in our HOA neighborhood looked picture-perfect on the outside. Manicured lawns, identical mailboxes, zero tolerance for anything that might lower property values. But behind the scenes, President Barbara Whitaker, the ultimate HOA Karen, ran the place like her personal kingdom, quoting bylaws at every potluck while smiling like she was doing us all a favor. Then came the monthly community potluck, the one they held in the common pavilion like it was some sacred family dinner. I was balancing a plate of potato salad when Barb tapped her plastic fork against her wine glass. "Neighbors," she announced in that syrupy voice she reserved for official business, "we have a compassionate opportunity here. My son Derek and his wife Lacey are expecting, but with her complications, the doctor says stairs are out of the question. Our bylaws have a little-known emergency family support clause. Section 7.2, I believe, and after careful board review, we've decided the best solution is to repurpose Layla's detached garage into a temporary nursery and living space for them. It's for the greater good, after all. Community first." The whole pavilion went quiet except for the crickets. I felt my pulse slam against my ribs, but years of nodding through her ridiculous fines for overgrown hydrangeas had trained my muscle memory. I forced a tight smile, set my plate down, and said, "All right, Barb. I'll start moving my things tomorrow." The sentence tasted like metal. If you're watching right now, drop the city you're tuning in from in the comments. Smash subscribe if an HOA Karen or entitled neighbor ever bulldozed your dreams and you're starving for the moment someone finally pushes back. This ride might hand you the exact words you've been choking on. The next morning, I opened the garage door with a stack of flattened boxes on one hip and packing tape in my hand. Male voices already echoed off the concrete. Barb's son Derek was wrestling my main strobe head off its stand, the $3,000 one that took 6 weeks to ship. Barb herself stood there in a pastel blazer, directing traffic like she owned the deed. Half my seamless paper rolls lay crumpled on the oil-stained floor like discarded party streamers. "Morning, Layla," Barb chirped without looking up, wiping dust from her hands onto her khakis. "Figured we'd get a jump so you don't have to rush after your little day job." Derek finally noticed me and flashed the same grin he used when he borrowed my parking spot last summer. "Hey sis, well neighbor. Lacey's having some cramps, so we need this space ASAP. Doctor's orders." Lacey stood in the corner, one hand pressed dramatically to her lower back, the other cradling a barely there bump under an oversized sweater. She winced theatrically every time Derek shifted a box. I'd seen her sprint across the pavilion for mimosas at last year's 4th of July barbecue. Today she moved like every step might shatter glass. I opened my mouth to protest, but the words jammed behind my teeth. Instead, I watched Derek tilt my macro lens, the 100mm prime I'd saved 8 months for, toward a plastic bin. The cap wasn't even on. He lost his grip. The lens hit the edge with a crunch that ricocheted like a gunshot inside my skull. Glass shards glittered across the floor. "Careful," I started, but Barb was already waving it off with a laugh. "Accidents happen, dear. You'll just book more clients for a new one, right? That's how this freelance photography hobby works." Derek kicked the broken lens under the workbench like yesterday's trash. Lacey let out a gasp and doubled over. "I think I felt something pull," she whimpered. "We really need to get the crib in here soon." Crib. The word landed like a live wire. I glanced at the corner where my softbox kit used to live. Now it held a cardboard box labeled "Baby Stuff" in Derek's messy scrawl. Barb followed my gaze. "Already listed some of your older gear on the neighborhood Facebook page last night," she said, pulling out her phone. "Your tilt-shift lens, the calibrated monitor, even that wireless trigger set. gone live at half price. Figured you'd want the cash to upgrade anyway. My stomach folded in on itself. Those weren't older gear. They were the backbone of every shoot booked through December. I knelt to salvage what I could, fingers trembling as I gathered cables and prayed the hard drives hadn't been stepped on. Lacey suddenly straightened. All traces of pain vanished. "Can we top paint colors?" she asked Barb. "Soft gray for the nursery walls, and maybe knock out that back partition for the changing station." Barb nodded like she'd suggested the weather. Derek started measuring the exact spot where my editing desk had been bolted for 4 years. The tape measure snapped shut with a metallic crack that matched the one in my chest. I loaded the first box myself, carefully wrapping the surviving strobe in bubble wrap I'd brought for this exact nightmare, labeling every cord. Barb and Derek kept working around me, discussing outlet placement for a rocking chair glider, occasionally nudging my gear aside with their designer sneakers. Dust from the concrete settled on my laptop sleeve. By the time the sun turned the garage into a greenhouse, I'd filled my trunk and back seat with the essentials. The rest, backdrops, light modifiers, the custom pegboard I built, sat stacked under a tarp Barb tossed over like an afterthought. Derek clapped me on the shoulder as I locked the side door. "You're the best, Layla. Always so flexible." Lacey blew me a kiss from the doorway, already scrolling nursery Pinterest boards on her phone. I drove away with the taste of metal in my mouth and the image of that shattered lens burned behind my eyelids. The garage, that sanctuary I'd financed with night shifts and skip vacations, was already morphing into someone else's future, while mine cracked apart in the rearview mirror. Back inside my actual house, I shoved the last box through the narrow hallway and let it thud against the wall. The living room barely fit a couch and coffee table scarred from years of takeout. Now it doubled as a makeshift studio. I wedged my editing monitor onto the kitchen counter. Its stand wobbled every time the fridge kicked on. Natural light came from one grimy window facing the alley, casting harsh shadows no white balance could fix. For years, I'd quietly covered more than my fair share of HOA special assessments. When the pool fund ran short, when the common area landscaping needed emergency fixes, even Derek's unpaid dues during his between-job stretches. I never asked for credit. It just became the rhythm. My photography income filled those gaps while the garage kept clients rolling in. Now crammed into the shoebox, the gaps looked bottomless. My first client call that afternoon was with a local jewelry brand I'd shot quarterly for 2 years. I propped the laptop on a stack of cookbooks, angled the salvaged ring light toward the ceiling, and hit connect. The founder's face filled the screen, eyebrows already raised at the cluttered background. "Sorry about the setup," I said, adjusting the camera for the 3rd time. "Temporary transition." She nodded politely, but her eyes kept drifting to the pots hanging behind me. We ran through the shot list, and I demonstrated a macro setup using my phone clipped to a tripod arm. The fridge hummed louder, drowning half my explanation. When I moved to grab a prop, the monitor stand tipped, sending the screen crashing into a cereal bowl. Milk splashed across the keyboard. "Let's pause here," she said, voice tight. "Send me options by end of week, but honestly, Layla, this feels off-brand for us right now." The call ended with a generic thank you email and the contract on hold indefinitely. That one shoot was 12% of my monthly freelance revenue. By midweek, I'd lost 2 more. A craft brewery canceled their seasonal label session after a Zoom where my backdrop, a bedsheet clipped to the curtain rod, wrinkled every time the heater vent blew. The owner cited production delays on our end, but suggested rescheduling in 6 months when things stabilize. Another client, a boutique skincare line, terminated outright after I missed a deadline because the house's single outlet couldn't handle the strobe charger and laptop at the same time. The breaker tripped mid-retouch. I ran the numbers that night on a legal pad balanced on my lap. 40% of my side, income gone in 4 days. The day job in marketing paid the mortgage, but the photography contracts were my runway to full-time independence, the ones that let me turn down soul-crushing corporate gigs. Now that runway had craters, and the HOA safety net I'd woven with extra payments was unraveling at both ends. Barb stopped by unannounced Friday evening, carrying a six-pack like we were celebrating. She surveyed the chaos, cables snaking across the carpet, reflectors leaning against the bathroom door, and shook her head with that familiar half-smile. "You'll figure it out," she said, cracking open a beer. "Always do. This photography thing's just a hobby anyway, right? Plenty of space at the community center tables if you need to spread out." I bit the inside of my cheek hard enough to taste copper. The community center tables where Barb hosted her book club every Tuesday, where Derek now stored his protein powder tubs because the garage shelves were temporary nursery prep. I picture trying to shoot glass bottles on those folding tables, ring marks from decades of HOA potlucks reflecting in every highlight. "It's not a hobby," a managed voice steadier than my hands. "Those contracts paid the extra assessments last quarter, so no one else got hit with a special levy. The landscaping repair the month before. Derek's dues when he was in transition." Barb waved it off like swatting a fly. "Your real job covers the essentials. Derek and Lacey need stability right now. Doctor visits, prenatal classes. You're young, adaptable. Set up in the corner by the window. Natural light's free." She left the remaining beers on the counter and headed back to her McMansion, humming an old song. The door clicked shut, leaving me alone with the hum of the fridge and the weight of invoices I couldn't fulfill. Plus the quiet realization that every extra dollar I'd funneled into the HOA had trained them to see my success as their buffer. That night, I lay awake listening to bass thumping from the garage below. Derek testing a baby monitor app at full volume. Each beat vibrated through the floorboards into my mattress. Sleep came in fits, dreams filled with shattered glass and unpaid bills stacking higher than the boxes, still waiting to be unpacked. Bills I'd once covered without hesitation, now echoing back as leverage I no longer controlled. 3 nights later, I padded downstairs for water, bare feet silent on the worn carpet runner that led past the side door. The hallway clock ticked past midnight, and a sliver of light spilled from under Barb's open window next door. Voices murmuring low enough that I almost kept walking, but something in her tone made me freeze. I pressed my back to the fence, just outside, heart thudding against my ribs as the conversation sharpened into focus. Barb's voice came first, soft but edged with that practiced concern she reserved for board meetings. "Derek can't keep bouncing between temp jobs forever. With the baby on the way, they need roots. The garage is perfect. High ceilings for a mobile, plenty of storage for diapers and toys." Derek chuckled, the sound muffled like he leaned back in a lawn chair. "Exactly. Lacey's already picked out the convertible crib. We'll paint this weekend, turn your old workbench into a changing table. Layla won't mind. She always rolls with whatever." Barb grunted approval. "That's our girl. Reliable. No drama. Remember when she paid the extra assessment to waive the mailbox color fine last year? Never complained once. We told Derek he could stay as long as needed before even looping her in. She'll adapt." The words hit like ice water down my spine. They hadn't just taken the space. They'd planned it without a second thought, banking on my silence like it was an HOA covenant passed down. I edged closer, breath shallow, until Lacey's voice cut through, higher pitched than usual, laced with fake breathlessness. "The doctor confirmed it today," she announced, and I could picture her hand splayed across her stomach for effect. 8 weeks. Morning sickness is brutal, but the ultrasound tech said everything looks strong. We have to prioritize rest. No more climbing those stairs multiple times a day. Barb gasped with delight. 8 weeks already. That's wonderful. We'll insulate the garage properly, add a mini fridge for midnight cravings. Derek, you focus on the business plan. Let me handle the heavy lifting. Business plan. The phrase twisted in my gut. Derek's last venture, some drop-shipping scheme, had drained their savings 6 months ago. The reason he'd shown up with duffel bags and excuses. Now, they were rewriting my garage into a permanent nursery. My equipment footnotes in their grand design. Barb lowered her voice, but not enough. Keep the pregnancy quiet around Layla for now. She's stressed with those lost clients. No need to pile on guilt. Once the room's done, she'll see it's for the greater good. Community first. She gets that. Derek agreed, chair scraping as he stood. Yeah, and if she pushes back, remind her the covenants are in the board's name. She pays extra dues anyway. Lacey's OB appointments alone cost more than that. Lacey laughed lightly. Poor thing thinks her little camera hobby competes with a grandchild. We'll get her a nice folding table for the house. She can edit there. The faucet ran, drowning the rest. But I'd heard enough. My fingers dug into the fence nails, scraping paint as the full picture snapped into place. They weren't borrowing the garage. They were claiming it indefinitely, using a fabricated timeline to lock me out. The fake cramps, the sudden confirmation, the paint swatches I'd glimpsed in Lacey's purse earlier that week. It all aligned into a calculated play. I slipped back inside before the window closed, water forgotten, and sat on the edge of my bed in the dark. The house walls closed in tighter than before. Every unpaid invoice now a brick in the cage they'd built around my future. For the first time, the pattern crystallized. Every concession I'd made, every extra assessment I'd covered had trained them to expect more. The reliable one, the adaptable one, that wasn't neighborly love. It was convenience wrapped in bylaws. My phone buzzed at 1 a.m. It was my best friend, Riley, from Denver, calling on FaceTime. I swiped to answer. Her face filled the screen with worry lines etched deeper than usual, blonde hair pulled into a messy bun like she'd been pacing. Layla, talk to me, she said before I could even say hello. I saw your Instagram story. That stack of boxes looks like a crime scene. What happened to the garage? I exhaled into the darkness, the ceiling fan slicing shadows across the walls. For the first time in days, words came easy. The potluck announcement, the broken gear, the client exodus, the window conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. Riley listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from shock to grim recognition. They did the exact same thing to me 3 years ago, she finally said, voice dropping to that post-battle quiet. Remember when I moved to Colorado? The HOA president needed my guest room for her niece's temporary stay. Turned out temporary meant 18 months while the niece launched her third failed food truck. I sat up straighter, pulling the blanket around my shoulders. You never told me that part. Because I was ashamed, she admitted. I let them box up my massage therapy table, my oils, everything. Lost my certification clients because I couldn't book sessions without a proper space. Kept paying extra dues on a neighborhood that wasn't mine anymore, hoping they'd notice I was disappearing. Riley leaned closer to the camera, eyes fierce. Here's the brutal truth, Layla. They won't change. Not Barb with her community-first lectures. Not Derek with his selective memory about whose sacrifices matter. And definitely not Lacey riding that fake pregnancy wave to permanent squatter status. Fake. The word caught in my throat. Riley nodded. Lacey posted a bump pic last month when she was slamming tequila shots at karaoke. This 8 weeks confirmed is theater. They're weaponizing it to chain you to that house forever. Cut them off. All of it. How? I whispered, glancing at the window like they might hear through 2 yards of fence. Financially, she said flatly. Stop paying those extra assessments. Find a real studio lease downtown. Text your old clients about a professional reboot in 2 weeks. Most will come back. Use your emergency fund for first and last month's deposit. Block the guilt trips before they start. My fingers tightened around the phone. The HOA budget will tank without my extra payments. The landscaping contract, the pool maintenance, Riley cut in. You didn't sign up to subsidize Derek's unemployment or Lacey's Pinterest nursery addiction. Pack tonight. I'll Venmo you $1,200 for the security deposit. Consider it repayment for that time I crashed your couch for a month. I open my laptop. The screens glow harsh in the dark room. Craigslist loaded instantly. 3 studio spaces under $1,500 in downtown Grand Rapids. All with drive-up loading docks and north-facing windows perfect for product work. I screenshotted floor plans, jotted down leasing agent numbers. Start with the exposed brick one on Fulton Street, Riley suggested, peering at my screen. I know the landlord. He rents to creatives. Tell him you're scaling a product photography business. He'll waive the credit check. By 2:30 a.m., I'd emailed 5 property managers with polished inquiries linking my portfolio site. At 3, I texted 3 salvage clients, the jeweler, the brewery, the skincare line, with identical messages. Exciting news. Securing professional studio space next week. Rescheduling availability opens Monday. Priority slots for established partners. For read receipts. 0 replies yet. But the action felt like oxygen after drowning. Riley stayed on the line until my eyes burned. One last thing, she said as dawn lightened the curtains. When they beg, and they will, remember this. Boundaries aren't selfish, they're survival. You built that business brick by brick while they planned baby showers on your dime. Now build the life that matches. The call ended with her waving from her actual home office, clean lines, proper lighting, thriving. I didn't sleep after that. Instead, I inventoried gear in a shared Google Sheet sent to my work email, calculated moving truck rental from U-Haul's site, mapped the shortest route from the house to Fulton Street. By 7 a.m., 2 leasing agents had replied. By noon, I'd toured the brick studio virtually and signed the lease digitally. First payment cleared from savings. Painful but finite. Riley's Venmo hit at the same time, right on schedule. I printed the lease agreement and slid it into a folder labeled Independence. Down the street, Derek blasted workout music through the garage walls, oblivious. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. 2 weeks later, the monthly HOA potluck smelled like Barb's signature pot roast, the one she pulled out for birthdays and reconciliations. I walked in with the lease folder tucked under my arm, the papers still warm from the printer. The pavilion tables were set for the usual crowd. Barb at the head, Derek slouched beside Lacey, who rested a protective hand on her midsection for show. Conversation stayed light at first. Whether Derek's latest warehouse interview was going anywhere, Lacey's complaints about swollen ankles. I passed the potatoes when asked, nodded at the right moments, but my pulse drummed a countdown in my ears. Dessert arrived, Barb's apple crisp steaming under vanilla ice cream, and she finally turned to me. So, how's the house set up treating you? She asked, fork poised. Clients back on board yet? I set my spoon down with deliberate care. Actually, that's why I wanted everyone here tonight. I've signed a lease on a commercial studio downtown, Fulton Street. Exposed brick, proper lighting grids. Moving in next weekend. Silence dropped like a curtain. Barb's smile froze mid-bite. Derek leaned forward, elbows on the tablecloth. Downtown? That's got to run, what, $2,000 a month? Your day job covers that. Between savings and rebooked contracts, yes, I said, sliding the folder across to Barb. Which brings me to the second part. Effective immediately, I'm stopping all extra assessments here and any other financial support. The house stays until I decide to sell or rent it out, but the subsidies end today. Barb's face flushed crimson, veins standing out on her forehead as she flipped through the lease pages. This is absurd. You're throwing away neighborhood stability over a hobby space. We count on those extra payments for the mortgage on the common areas, for the landscaping contract. Lacey dabbed her eyes with a napkin, tears welling on cue. Layla, honey, think about Derek. The baby's due any day now. Doctor bills are piling up. We can't lose the community perks because you're upset about a few canceled shoots. Derek jumped in, voice cracking with practiced desperation. Come on, neighbor. Lacey's been spotting. Stress isn't good. We barely have grocery money after the crib deposit. Cut us a break. Just 6 more months until my certification comes through. Lacey clutched her belly tighter, letting out a small whimper. I knew this would happen. Everyone warned me you'd bail when things got real. What about community first? We need you. I stood slowly, chair legs scraping the concrete. Community first stopped applying when you turned my business into a nursery without asking. The fake pregnancy timeline, the sold equipment, the long-term plan, it's over. I'm done subsidizing excuses. Barb slammed the folder shut. Ungrateful. After everything the board has given you, waive fines, no questions asked. Walk out that gate and you're on your own. No more holiday events. No more help when your studio flops. Lacey sobbed openly now, reaching for my hand across the table. Please, sweetheart, we're all under one set of bylaws for a reason. Sit down. We'll figure something out. Derek stood too, blocking my path to the exit. You're seriously doing this over paint swatches and a crib? Lacey's blood pressure spiked last week. Think about the baby. Lacey nodded vigorously, fresh tears streaming. We can share the garage. You take mornings, we take afternoons. Compromise like always. I stepped around Derek, hand on the gate latch. Compromise ended when you assumed I'd keep paying for it. The new studio keys are in my pocket. This is goodbye to the subsidies. Not necessarily to the neighborhood, but that's your choice now. Barb's voice boomed behind me. Fine, leave. See how long you last without us catching you when you fall. I didn't respond. The gate slapped shut at my back, the cool evening air hitting my face like freedom. My car sat loaded in the driveway, final boxes from the house secured with ratchet straps. The engine turned over on the first try, and I pulled away without looking in the rearview. By 9 that night, I'd unloaded at the Fulton Street studio. The space echoed, empty but full of potential. High ceilings begging for seamless rolls, outlets every 6 feet for strobes. I hung the first backdrop, the white paper unrolled smooth and clean under track lighting that actually worked. Riley texted a thumbs-up emoji when I sent photos. Clients confirmed reshoots for Monday. The silence in the new space felt earned, not imposed. 6 months later, a text from an unknown number lit up my phone while I directed a luxury watch shoot in the Fulton Street studio. The message was short. It's Derek. Need to talk. Urgent. I finished the session, handed off raw files to my new assistant, a sharp recent grad named Mia who handled retouching like a pro, and only then opened the thread. The full story spilled out in frantic bursts. Derek's certification had turned into another drop-shipping flop. This one saddled him with credit card debt that ballooned past $50,000. Suppliers sued, accounts froze, and the garage nursery sat half-painted with unpaid contractor liens. Barb had co-signed the business loans to help family, convinced Derek's charm would turn things around again. Voicemails from Barb rolled into my inbox. Tearful pleas about foreclosure, notices taped to her door. The bank auction scheduled in 30 days. Without your extra assessments coming back, we can't make the payments, she whispered in one. Layla, we need you. Lacey vanished first. A mutual neighbor spotted her at a bar downtown. No bump in sight, flirting with a bartender and bragging about dodging a bullet. She left Derek a note on the kitchen counter. No baby, no money, no future. Packed her designer bags, and ghosted to Chicago with a new guy who'd promised influencer sponsorships. Derek showed up at the studio unannounced one rainy afternoon, soaked and unshaven, clutching a manila envelope. He looked smaller without the swagger, eyes darting to the seamless rolls and calibrated monitors that now filled a space triple the garage size. I'm messed up, he admitted, voice cracking. Lacey was never pregnant. Said to lock down the room. Mom's furious. She's on anxiety meds. They're moving to a 1-bedroom if the sale goes through. Can you loan us 20 grand just to stop the bleeding? I handed him a bottle of water from the mini fridge, kept my tone even. No. The studio lease is locked for a year. Payroll for Mia eats the profit margin, and my emergency fund rebuild itself without HOA bailouts. You chose the path. Live with the turns. He begged for an hour, promises of repayment plans, part-time work on my shoots, even offering to clean lenses for free. I walked him to the door when the next client arrived. The click of the lock felt final behind him. Bar tried next. A handwritten letter slid under the studio door during a closed session. It detailed hospital bills for her stress-induced heart palpitations, blamed my abandonment for the neighborhood's collapse. I scanned it once, filed it in the shredder, and booked a bigger space for expanding into video production. Business doubled in those 6 months. Word spread about the professional setup, consistent lighting, fast turnarounds, and referrals poured in from agencies across Michigan. I hired me a full-time, added a second shooter for weddings, and finally paid myself a salary that covered rent in a downtown loft without dipping into savings. The old HOA house sold at auction for less than owed. Barb and Derek downsized to a senior complex with subsidized rent. Lacey's social media went dark after the bartender dumped her for someone with actual followers. I never reached out. Boundaries held like steel beams in a new studio foundation. Sometimes the only way to win is to walk away completely. Let consequences teach what bylaws never could. If your HOA Karen or entitled neighbor ever treated your dreams like disposable props, know this. Rebuilding alone beats subsidizing chaos forever. Thanks for sticking with my story to the end. Drop in the comments what you'd do if an HOA president pulled this on you. Share your city, your boundary line. Subscribe for more real talk, HOA Karen drama turn triumph. See you next time.